afternoon. Good afternoon, and thank you very much for inviting me. And I suppose I'll probably be the one odd person out. So I'll just make sure you're all healthy, so be sure about that. It's my pleasure to be part of this conference, and I would like to start by inviting the panelists for this session. Dr. Abdul Razak Garba. Dr. Abdul Razak Garba is a Director General, Nigerian Geological Survey Agency, and Chairman of the Nationwide Integrated Mineral Exploration Program in Nigeria. Dr. Garba has a degree in geology from the prestigious Ahmad Bello University Zaria, where I teach, and we happen to have been there sometime at the same time, and a PhD in mineral exploration from the University of Ilorin. Dr. Garba, please. The second person in our panel is Mr. James Eyre, Director, North Coast Consulting. North Coast Consulting Limited is a minerals and environmental consultancy specializing in the provision of services to the world mining sector. NCC draws on years of experience to offer bespoke assistance to the UK and international mining market and has participated in the development of Nigerian mining market. You're welcome, please. Our last but not the least panelist is Mr. James Phillip. He's the Vice President Corporate Development of Thor Exploration, which is a Canadian mineral exploration company. Thor's most advanced project is the Segilola Gold Project located in Osun State of Nigeria, and the project is considered Nigeria's most advanced gold mining project. You're welcome. So this afternoon, in exploring the mining sector in Nigeria, there are a number of things that I'm sure that are going through the minds of people. One is Nigeria. Second is Boko Haram. Third is a lot of many things that have been in the news recently. But also importantly, there are also things that are less spoken of, the potential for leading the economy in this sector in Africa. So, Mr. Garba, what is it that the Nigerian government is doing? Or how is the Nigerian government working to make sure it makes the best use of this opportunity?
Thank you very much, the moderator. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As we are all aware, or to some extent, some of us understand that the Nigerian mining sector is largely underdeveloped and underexplored. But then, Nigeria is endowed with quite a number of mineral resources. Right from the colonial era, Nigeria has been a major miner and exporter of coal, exporter of iron ore. In recent times, Nigeria has been noted to have exported some quantity of gold and other mineral resources, like battery minerals, tantalum, lithium, to some extent. Now, we also know that Nigeria has been mono-economy. We depend so much on oil. So the government in recent times decided that there has to be a rapid way of addressing or diversifying Nigerian economy. That led to the birth of National Integrated Mineral Exploration Project. The exploration project is designed to rapidly generate geoscience information that has been lacking in the system And without this Johnson information, which was mentioned by SRK and PSGS, foreign direct investment will come to the country. So what the government did was to expend or invest fortune in addressing this issue by inviting companies to assist or to work with the Nigerian Geological Survey to generate the necessary geoscience data that can attract investment into the country. We have about 4 lots. These lots addressed or looked at the metallurgy or mineral provinces, established mineral provinces we have in Nigeria, which we have the gold belt on the western part of Nigeria. Then we have the Benue Drop, where we have the MVT type lead zinc mineralization. Then we have pockets of pegmatite minerals that hold minerals like tantalum, lithium, and so on and so forth. So all these we put together, and that forms the basis of the NIME project. Currently, some of the companies have been working. A lot of discoveries are being made. For instance, on the northwestern part of Nigeria, where we have the ultramaphites, we have looked at that area and we discovered that there is the potential for becoming a project for nickel, chromium, and cobalt mineralization. To some extent, we have some platinum group elements in these terrains. So in essence, what I'm telling you is this: the government of Federal Republic of Nigeria has invested money to de-risk the mining sector and ensure the necessary foreign direct investment comes into the country.
You did mention to me that you were going to invite one of your colleagues to share the discussion, the work that you've been doing so far in the government's efforts to ensure that it creates an enabling environment for for mining in Nigeria. Do you still want to invite Dr. Warwick?
Besides what I've said on the NIME project, of course, if you take, for example, the Mining Cadastral Office. The Mining Cadastral Office is supposed to provide an environment for investors to apply in the sector and take licenses. We are currently upgrading the Mining Cadastral to ensure that online applications from any part of the world can be received. And this application will be treated from any part of the world you are, and then you can obtain the license as long as you meet all the necessary conditions that the government puts in place. So these are some of the improvements. We have the Mining Act. Our Mining Act adequately supports investment into the sector, allows people to come into the country, that you have the opportunity of 100% titration of profits made. For imports of mining equipment, government made provision for some tax free holidays for a number of years, then in the time you start operation in the country. Thank you very
much. Thank you. May I then have the pleasure to invite you, Mr.
Thank you. I do have a presentation. It's my pleasure to be here this afternoon, to present on a program for MINDIVA. It's a World Bank funded IDA credit to the Ministry of Mines and Steel Development in Nigeria to aid in the mineral sector support for economic diversification in Nigeria. Many of you may not be as old as I am, who can remember times when Nigeria was a major producer of mineral wealth, in particular tin, tantalum, coltan, coal, limestone. But during the 1970s, there was a move and a focus away from mineral production, from solid mineral production to liquid minerals, to hydrocarbons. And with that move came a change of focus away from the mineral sector to the source of revenue, which was a major to the GDP for Nigeria, and hence a change in focus away from solid mineral activity. We aim with the MINDIVA programme to change that attitude and to increase the contribution towards GDP by mineral sector production. I am here today acting as a technical advisor to the MINDIVA project on behalf of the Ministry of Mines and Steel Development, and there's a little small print at the bottom to say that the views and opinions are mine and not necessarily those of the government, the ministries or the World Bank Group. There's a longer explanation of the same thing. My solicitor says, okay, all that means is you can say what you like, but as far as the audience is concerned, don't believe a word of what is said. Okay. As I said, the MINDIVA project is a partnership between the World Bank and the Ministry of Mines and Steel Development, and it carries on from a history of consultative process and direct engagement since 2005. It provides $150 million credit to the government to, in a short phrase, enhance the contribution of mining sector to the Nigerian economy. It's about to start in earnest. The credit was approved in 2018, and it's designed together with a roadmap for the growth and development of the Nigerian mining industry, which was developed by the Ministry of Mines and Steel Development on the back of World Bank analytical work, in which I had a small part. The roadmap is available on the website from MMSD, and it's designed really to try to attract investment in exploration and mining, we'll about that later, increase productivity from industrial minerals in particular to meet local demand by boosting domestic production, expanding the geodata and geological knowledge in contribution with the NGSA, and to strengthen implementation and enforcement of the mining law and regulations, and also particularly to facilitate access to finance. Nigeria, whilst it has a long and prestigious past in the production of minerals from solid mineral activity, unfortunately that really tailed off in the 1960s and 1970s, and the country and financial institutions have some ground to make up in providing knowledge and de-risking mining investments in the country. So one of the aspects of the work that will be undertaken by MINDIVA is to help generate mining desks within the country, help improving access to finance through certain interventions. I've said its objective is to improve the attractiveness of the sector, to create a globally competitive sector which is capable of contributing to wealth, providing jobs, importantly, and advancing social and human security. Those are areas not to be underestimated. Mineral production within Nigeria is largely through the ASM sector, artisanal and small-scale mining, which has in itself health, safety, environmental concerns, and gender impact issues which need to be taken into account. We're not looking as a programme or as the ministry to replace ASM. We're looking to try to help ASM grow. That doesn't mean say we wouldn't attract medium-sized operations into the country as well, and we have representatives here today to talk about. The key results of the programme are intended to be increasing the availability of pre-competitive geoscience data. That links rather nicely with a previous speaker who was talking about the USGS approaches and analysis that have been done to show how pre-competitive data can enhance mineral transactions along the line. Nigeria, which have come to exploration and are at the tipping point of moving forward to that next stage of production. And what we hope with the project is that we can help make that pivot happen, either through assistance with access to finance, assistance at technical assistance programs, perhaps, to investigate, to do some analysis on what we call proof of concept investments, so to try to show that there is this association between providing pre-competitive data and bringing forward projects to production. Second result is really institutional information systems. One of the aspects of this talk, of this session, was to talk about information technology and improvements in the system and in multi-sector planning tools. An intention of the Mindiva project is to introduce a decision support system and to use GIS and integrated management systems to improve the capacity of the MMSD in particular, to help regional planning. Providing incentives, as I mentioned, for artisanal and small-scale mining, formalisation, and to provide an inventory, and to improve environmental and social compliance by mining industry operators. How do we do that? Okay, it's broken down into basically 3 stages. Establishing a foundation for mining sector development. The numbers there are the amounts assigned to each of those groups of activities. We'll be looking at strengthening governance and transparency, looking at strengthening geological knowledge and information, skills building, educational support for the mining sector, and importantly, environmental health and social performance improvements. There's lots of information back up each of those components. If anybody is so minded, then the information is available on the World Bank website. But what I would like to stress is that unlike previous, let's say, traditional World Bank support, which concentrates on capacity building within the ministry, we're actually looking at improving geological data. And we're looking primarily at facilitating downstream sector improvements to increase and enhance competitiveness. So formalising, regulating, inventorying ASM operations, developing regional areas, perhaps through mineral corridor approach, of linking different types of deposits or different proof of concept investments, where the government can help to support the creation of infrastructure to generate income and revenue and employment for operations within that mineral corridor. Something that we'll be looking at in detail in Nigeria. Implementing steps for enhancing value addition, so looking at downstream production, import substitutions by the production of domestic product, and the generation of industrial activity therefrom. I've mentioned accessing to finance and proof of concept. Far too complicated a slide to be going through here. That looks at the matrix for the benefit and the induced direct economic benefits of the project, starting with, on the left-hand side, information systems, primarily geodata, but also the potential for mineral corridors linking together preferential sites for data, and then coming to produce transactions for assets. Those types of, or that type of approach is used from at the top now, going vertically, looking at economic development corridors, using geophysics and geochemistry, providing topo data, which is part of the project, assistance with geoscientific information, collecting and gathering geodata, putting that onto an electronic format to try to de-risk the selection of sites for mineral potential, and then zooming down to assets which can be taken forward for transaction. Proof of concept work will be done at each of those stages. With the expected results that there will be a mining information management system, improved geological database, decision support system, and an environmental impact management system, information management system, advancing proof of concepts, enhancing geological knowledge, and increasing assistance to ASM operators, with the intention that we can look and focus on mineral ASM cooperatives, perhaps in looking at mineral buying centres, something that will be analysed and to see whether that's going to be appropriate in the circumstances, and to try to reduce the effects of leakage to the economy, is the posh way of saying, try and track down revenues. Yeah. Increasing percentage of mining exploitation and production through a formal system for environmental and safety inspections, following good international, there's a word missing there, practice, yeah, and increasing production data from ASM operations. I'm going to stop there, but I think that was a brief and rather rapid introduction to what is a large project which will continue over the next 5 years.
Please can we appreciate it? Thank you very much. Before I go to you, Mr. James Philip, I would want to use this opportunity to invite a partner to the Nigerian government, Dr. Wale Crow, to share his own experience, and then I'll come back to you, and then we go back to everybody for questions and answers. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'll just wait for my presentation to come up. Okay, so we've been working on just one aspect of this regional mineralisation project in Nigeria. So our focus has been on the gold and chrome nickel plays that are present in Nigeria. So I guess our area of interest was very large. So we had over 300,000 square kilometres to look at. And in Nigeria there was very little understanding of the mineral systems in Nigeria with respect to the gold, and certainly when it comes to platinum group elements, was next to nothing. A couple of paragraphs and some historical documents of chrome occurrences. So we had a very low starting base to try and do this in a very short period of time. So, as part of this broad area which covers, nearly half of Nigeria, we had to try and rapidly reduce the focus to very specific, target areas or prospective areas that we could then get in on the ground and get some ground operations going. So part of this was looking at the regional data sets that are available in Nigeria. So in Nigeria, they've got complete coverage with magnetics and radiometrics. It's all at the 500 metre line space, so quite reasonable data to work with, particularly at this regional scale. And the other thing we needed to do was try and get an understanding of the mineral systems, particularly for the gold and very particular for the PGE chrome nickel systems that might be present. So I guess we did a regional interpretation of the data, a lithostructural interpretation of the data. We looked at all the distribution of the mineralisation through the area, and what became apparent was Like for the gold mineralisation, there was a very strong association with some major structural corridors, which were late tectonic reactivated systems that were part of the late stage Pan-African technothermal event. So those structures were, I guess, associated with those structures, we had probably around 80–90% of the known gold occurrences associated with that within those two structural corridors. So I guess from working through this and building up a structural understanding of what was going on. So as part of that, we were looking at specific known deposits and looking at the structural controls on those deposits. So what was, I guess, quite well known in the literature was this dextral, so right-handed transpressional deformation that sort of basically defines the whole structural geometry of the Nigerian Pan-African system. But when you started looking at the mineralisation through the area, they were controlled by synstral systems, very late vein systems cross-cutting the pervasive foliation through the area. So the mineralisation for the gold, very late and associated with a late synstral reactivation. So sort of, I guess, building that framework and started looking at the structural geometry that we were interpreting in terms of the late reactivated structures, we came up with a number of target areas to look at. For the nickel chrome targets, there was a particular association with the shear zone, and in the past that had always been thought to be an ophiolite type association. So that was the point we started, and we went to the magnetics, and we started identifying some intrusive complexes, which we've got on the ground and had a look and started seeing our ultramafic associations with those. And the timing of those was not early, it was syntectonic intruding along the shear zone, so not an ophiolite association at all. So all up, we've got 9 project areas that we're working on, and this is sort of, I guess, a very simple slide showing the stages of the exploration of what we're doing. So we've finished the stage 1 where we've looked at the regional picture, got an understanding of what the potential mineral systems are looking like, and we've generated some target areas which will result into 9 project areas. So at the moment we're on the ground, we've done a lot of ground mapping, field mapping. We've collected about 10,000 line kilometres of ground magnetic data, and we're in the process of an extensive soil geochemical survey throughout the area. So at the moment we've collected around 6,000 soil samples, and we're probably about 2/3 of the way through that program. So the aim is we need to get this aspect of the program completed before the wet season kicks in and limits access. Because in terms of our timeline, we need to be moving towards I guess, deposit definition by the dry season when it comes in sort of September, October. So what I'll do is I'll just briefly cover a series of our projects that we've been working on, and then I'll talk a bit more detail about a couple of the projects. So Zamfara State's in the north, so we've got 2 gold projects up there. One we call the South Sado project, and then the other's the North Wuya project. So the South Sado project is a dilational structural zone in behind an intrusive complex. Now this intrusive complex is associated with one of our chrome nickel targets. So it's a composite intrusion that's got gabbros and granites. So I'll talk about that in a bit more detail. But with the tightening up and wrapping of that body, which is behaving quite rigidly, we're getting dilational structures in the back of it. We've got a number of known artisanal workings along that, but there's a whole series of structures. So at the moment, in the sort of left lower slide, you can see we've got a soil program going on there. We're collecting soils on a 200 by 50 metre grid at the moment, which will infill once we get. So as part of trying to be efficient, there's a real bottleneck for us at this point in time is getting the samples through the lab. So what we're doing in interim is we're doing XRF of all the soils, to particularly not targeting gold, but targeting pathfinder elements, to then plan our infill so that we can keep hitting our timelines on this. But I'll talk about why we're picking a 50 metre sample spacing a bit later on. So in North Wooya, the structural model for this is a releasing bend, where we've got the, structural geometry in place during the dextral, during the synstral reactivation. We get into dilation, we've got some granite bodies around the margins of that, so we're getting mineralisation associated with some of these reactivated structures along the granite contacts, and in particular in this zone where we've got compositional variation between more semitic rocks and samopalitic rocks, we're getting nice brittle deformation in the stronger units that were boudinaged during the dextral transgression. So once we've reactivated them, they're fracturing up and they're hosting mineralisation. So through this area, there's quite a number of targets that we're going to follow up. So in the top right is where we're collecting magnetic data. We've just about finished collecting this, and we've just finished the ground mapping. So we're going in there and got a number of targets at the trench probably in September. Another gold area is in Kebbi State, so that's in central west. This is a sort of a late stage granite intrusions, which you can see by the nice red little blobs in the radiometric data on the left. The black units are sort of sandstone units, packages that are behaving quite strongly, and we're getting, extension of structures developed in the pressure shadows of those granites where the deformation is wrapping it. This is right in the middle of the Ankar shear zone. So we've got a number of geochemical programs going on there. And on the right, you can see this is the planned area where we've got our soil sampling going on. So that's a 200 by 50 metre grid again. In Ocean State, down south in the Alicia area, it's a little bit different, this program, in that the terrain was very different. So we've got more rugged, elevated terrain, more tropical, heavily forested, incised by a lot of drainage. So rather than just jumping in straight away with a soil program, we did a stream sampling, or panning, looking for gold. So basically, we had a source into that drainage, and we follow that up to its extent and isolate the main. So what was interesting about this was, as you can see in the top left, is a more regional picture. So you've got the main Alicia shear zone to the east, and we've got very limited results in that. So the Alicia shear zone is where the Segilola deposit is, and it's just off this map to the south. But up north, we were getting very little gold results. But most of the results, and some quite strong results, were occurring to the west within the subsidiary shear system that was occurring to the west. And what's important about this area is that we've got contrasting lithologies. So we've got nice gabbroic sequences that are juxtaposed against palitic systems. And we started getting some very good pan result numbers through there. So at the moment, we're finishing off some soils. So the soils we did was in a bit broader grid. The reason for this was because of the elevated terrain, we had a lot more transported material, so there was very little in situ development of material. So we are looking for broader footprint responses that we can try and narrow in. So part of that is going to be using the structural interpretation, and on the lower right, we've just got some XRF results. So we're getting the soil results, the geochem on this later, but on the arsenic and the copper, we start getting some nice anomalies coinciding with some of the structures that we're seeing. So, it's giving us a focus for a more detailed infill. In terms of the platinum group nickel chrome targets, what we found was there are some distinct late tectonic intrusive complexes that are along the shear zones, and in particular the Ankar shear zone. So you can see that in the left image, where you can see where the arrows are pointing to two complexes. So there's the Aseto intrusive complex, and you can see the nice high mag response there. And there's the Kumbo intrusive complex, which is a lot larger, it's about three times larger than the Aseto complex. So this is the Kumbo complex. So this is on a very broad sample spacing. So it's 800 by 200 because it's such a big area. You know, there's thousands of samples that we need to collect in this area. So we've finished the first phase run, and that was at about 800 metres. So we're infilling to 400 metres at this point, which will define some of the anomalies that are starting to come out. So we can see, you know, we're in the geochemistry on the right, we're getting some nice chrome numbers along a sort of multi-line hits on some chrome. Cobalt's a bit weak, but we're getting some stronger hits in the nickel as well. So we'll be following up on those and taking that down to about 50 metre sampling level. So before I go on to talk in a bit more detail about a couple of the other projects, one of the first things we noticed with the gold, particularly when we went up north, was the very poor development of the soil profiles. So instead of just going ahead and running a soil program and then submitting the samples and getting them sieved and getting the clay fraction out and analysing them, we ran a pilot study to understand where the gold might be in these soil profiles. So the results were actually quite startling in many respects, in that what we essentially did was particularly try sampling right at the base of this profile where we had a coarse fraction lying on the saprolite. We sampled the whole soil sample, and then we sampled a sieved sample section, and ran multiple methods of different weights on each of those to determine what was going to be the most optimal method. And as it turns out, the whole soil results gave us stronger anomalies and more consistent anomalies, whereas if we had sieved the samples, which is essentially standard practice in soil sampling, we would have missed a number of anomalies. So this test was done over a known target area, known mineralised vein, and it certainly, particularly even with the pathfinder elements like the arsenic and the lead, so it really made us start thinking about, right, we need to plan around that and plan how we might run the exploration program with the soils on these results. Because when you look at historical results from exploration companies that had a go in Nigeria, a lot of them, like Australian companies that have come in, just run a standard soil program, submitted to the lab, had sieved samples, and you look at the results, they're patchy and all over the place. So it's quite, what we're seeing here, quite often a good chance that they've missed a lot of anomalous zones with their work. So, you know, part of this, I guess, from this study, one of the more optimal, with a 50 metre line space sample, with, oh, sorry, I've got 5 minutes. With a 50 metre line space sample, while it's not optimal for picking up the gold, it will be more optimal for picking up some of the pathfinder like arsenic and lead, which seems to have a strong association with the gold. So in the Sawney project, which is just outside of Abuja, we've got some artisanal workings and some quite significant artisanal workings along this zone, and they define a very narrow structural corridor through there. But what's important about this zone is that there's a broad demagnetized area through there, and that sort of looked to us that it might have a lot more potential for a lot more mineralisation along that system. So we've mapped it, and we've run some soil samples across there, and we're at the end stage of infilling. So these sort of soil samples were at 500 by 50, and we're infilling now to, in particular, target zones down to 125 by 25 metre of soil sampling along those lines. And this is some of the results that we've got So this is the actual geochemistry from the lab. So we've run XRF on all of this, so they sort of match up, but what the XRF is doing is defining our anomalous zones, particularly in arsenic and lead. So we've got a couple of these very strong corridors you can see in copper and arsenic running down from the north central down towards the sort of eastern side of it, and that's what we're following up now. SADO complex, so this is what this is one of our, I guess, better projects. So we started with the ultramatrix with a lot more effort at the beginning because we knew nothing about what was going on there in terms of the chrome and nickel. So we hit this hard and we did some ground mag over it and defined a very strong anomaly, so strong that it blew out all, even the ground mag couldn't actually image it all up. Yep, all right, we've got 2 more slides. So we've mapped it and we've got some very strong chrome and copper anomaly, chrome and nickel anomalies. So there's some of the chromite bands, so we get banded chromite, we get polyform chromite. We've got chrome values up to 4,000 ppm, nickel values up to 3,000 ppm. We've also got low-level platinum and palladium numbers. And this is the last slide. We started an EM program across there. We had instrumentation problems, so we're getting a new system brought in as of next week. But the early results from an inverted line that we got good data from is showing a very strong conductor. So these are very resistive rocks, and we've got a very strong conductor through there, which is quite encouraging in terms of potential for nickel sulfide. So that's where we're at. We are ready to plan drilling, trenching on this program, but we're going to wait until we get our EM data to plan the drilling. All right, thank you.
Yes, please, for the questions and answers. And can I use this opportunity to invite James, please, to share with us your on-the-ground experience working in Nigeria?